live.
Thank you. A warm welcome to those of you here in the room this evening and those watching on the Council's YouTube channel. The details of the two petitions I'm going to consider tonight were in the published agenda. There are resident feedback forms, I believe, out there, and if you're watching online, they're also available under the broadcast. We're not expecting a fire drill tonight, so if the fire alarm goes, please follow the officer team out of the building. For those of you who are here, could you please switch off your mobile phones, or at least put them to silent, please, before the meeting starts. I'll do some introductions. I'm Councillor Eddie Lavery, the Cabinet Member for Resident Services, and I'm taking tonight's meeting. I have an officer team with me tonight. Richard Webb on the far right is the Director of Community Safety and Enforcement. Stuart Hunt, Head of Green Spaces, Sports and Culture, and Liz Penny for Democratic Services is our clerk. The officers are here. Richard is here for the first petition and Stuart is here for the second. Any declarations of interest in matters coming before tonight? No. All of the meeting is in public, and you've got the paper. Let me just explain how petition hearing works. Some of you are very familiar with it, I'm sure others may not be. Speaking time, I run at 5 minutes. That's normally enough. I have a little bit of discretion on that, but 5 minutes is the time. Ward councillors can have 3 minutes. Given that if you've done these in the old days, we used to be a little bit more informal in the sense that we could do a bit of discussion from the floor. I can't do that now because the whole of this meeting has to be audible on the YouTube. So it has to be speakers from the table. I'm sorry, but that's the way it has to be. Once I've heard from everybody, I will then lead the discussion, and then I will consider the recommendations which have been put together by officers. I may either accept those recommendations or I may add some, vary them, depending on what I hear. The first petition is on Rice at Lido. The second one is on Uxbridge Common. If anybody is here for the second of the two, I actually can't start that till 6:15 because, again, if people wish to follow that on YouTube, we have to adhere to that timing. I can start it later, but I can't start it earlier. Right. I will start with agenda item 4, which is the petition requesting changes to parking provisions in the car parks at Ruislip Lido. Yeah, whoever's speaking, if you press the red button press the button on the middle, it should light up, and that's your microphone live. When you're ready.
The petition seeks to rectify an oversight in the current parking management scheme, requesting the alignment of both Lido car parks to the restriction times in the RL2 zone, freedom of information data from pay and display machines. Revenue generated from both car parks in 2023 for half a year was $249,000. Revenue generated in 2023 after 6 p.m. for a complete year was $10,185. Current issues: residents parking versus Lido visitors. Visitors are using residents' permit bays to avoid parking fees, causing inconvenience to residents. The misalignment between the car park payment times and the resident zone restriction is a significant oversight. Residents who pay for permits still cannot park when returning home from work after 6 p.m. Visitors remain parked in the RL2 until late into the evening, causing problems to residents such as noise and antisocial behaviour. London Borough of Hillingdon have created a volatile situation of conflict between residents and visitors. Residents' concerns: extending restriction times might not be feasible due to the lack of enforcement, additional costs and the complexity of obtaining online visitor permits, as most residents are still using the easier method of paper permits. An extension of the restriction time would only be considered if the Lido was secured and closed by 10 p.m. Proposed solutions: align car parks with resident zone times, matrix signs to inform visitors of free parking after 6 p.m, encouraging visitors to use car parks instead of residents' permit bays. This aligns with other pay and display machines within the borough. Recovering lost revenue. The vehicle pound, intended to offset the cost of the tow truck, remains non-operational due to the design fault, resulting in $49,000 of wasted taxpayers' money. This needs to be made operational to contribute back into the funds. Also, over 80 spaces are currently generating no revenue. Each space is worth over £1,000 a year. Reassigning some back into visitors' use could easily offset any lost revenue. Conclusion. Residents should not need to attend a petition hearing that should have been automatically intelligently intervened. The current misalignment reflects a lack of common sense in policy implementation, unfairly burdening residents who already pay for drop curbs and parking permits. There is no doubt the large increase in parking fees in recent years has contributed to the problem. Call to action. The Council should take immediate steps to align parking restrictions with car park parking payment times, enforce parking rules more effectively, and explore alternative revenue streams to offset any potential loss. This would ensure fair treatment for residents and a more efficient use of public resources. There are multiple issues surrounding the current parking management scheme, and we wish for London Borough of Hillingdon to source a bespoke scheme that supports residents living beside this popular attraction. I have a handout on the history of Lido parking. It's a shocking read. It explains how available parking has dropped by over 1,000 spaces since 1992. It also details how Willow Lawn car park has only increased spaces by 33, and 13 of those are railway spaces. That's the end of my petition. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Can you just stay where you are, then just make it easier to do questions in a moment. Will council, whichever of you wishes to say?
Thank you. Well, first of all, I take it I can proceed. No one's saying otherwise, so I'll proceed. First of all, thanks to Ms. Date for her presentation, impeccably researched in some detail. I've been surprised had you done anything else, so well done. And I do support the broad thrust of what she's saying, although you've covered a lot of ground that goes beyond, I suppose, the specific ask here. And I can see a wry smile from Councillor Lavery, as much of what I'm about to say is what I've spoken to him about privately in the past. So it will come as no surprise to him that I'm sympathetic to what is being requested by petitioners. The roads in and around Reservoir Road, I would suggest at peak periods, experience a level of vehicle movement and parking stress which is unique in the north of the borough and possibly in the borough in its entirety. And I actually think we're asking an awful lot of what is, at the end of the day, a standard parking management scheme at this location, particularly as I understand that just 1 or 2 visits per day is all we can reasonably expect from enforcement officers, and little or nothing after 5 or 6 p.m. in the evening. And it's no surprise, of course, that now we're charging for permits. There is heightened interest in the level of enforcement received. Level of enforcement we will get maybe perfectly well in Chichester Avenue and Manor Road, places like that. But this particular location, where the vehicle movement is very much weather-driven at particular times of day, that doesn't necessarily respect PMS operating hours. It's a different proposition altogether. At the moment, people return home from work in the early evening, find themselves unable to park in, say, Lakeside Close for Lido visitors, stopping them from doing so after the PMS stops, while we're still charging for the car park. Or we've got a situation where they're running the gauntlet of unpleasant behaviour from some visitors if they have the temerity to challenge people over parking where they shouldn't be. Now, I've no one in particular in mind with that. I personally believe, as you know, Councillor Lavery, that we do need a bespoke scheme long-term for specific events. And if that really is out of the question, let's leave that aside for the moment. I would have thought the least we could do is to seek to align the car park charging regime times to those of the PMS to help reduce some of the adverse impacts of parking in the evenings. I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
A bit like John Lewis, never knowingly underspoken. But just to say this, Councillor Avery, we know that you know the difficulties and problems that have existed for a very long time at the Lido with regard to not only parking but also visitor behaviour, and we need to do far more to mitigate that whole situation for residents. The lead petitioner has made a very, very good case for this particular issue, but there are also, as we know, much wider improvements to the whole situation as to parking and to that extent the consistent antisocial behaviour that visitors bring to this area, albeit during a relatively limited time period. But nevertheless, we need to do everything we can to mitigate what has become and becomes every year. To have residents call you up and say they dread the summer months is not acceptable anymore. It probably never was in the first place, but it's not. And certainly in my time responsible for the area in Cabinet and before, and as long as I've been a councillor, we've been trying to find better ways of dealing with what is treated essentially as an attraction in a very residential area, and it's a big problem, and we do need to do everything we can. So I support what Councillor Cawthorne's just said, I support the lead petitioner, and I hope you will support what's being asked for. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all for your commentary. Just a couple of things out of the report. I will pass some general comments. There's a lot of stuff in here which is beyond the scope of tonight's hearing, and therefore you will understand I'm not getting into the detail of, because that could take up a whole evening of and not what the petition is about. In terms of revenue loss, just for clarity, and perhaps Richard you would clarify this for me, the report is quoted, the petitioner quoted one item from a set of figures.
I can tell you the difference. You had 3 months of the 5 years and mine didn't.
Yeah, no, that wasn't the question I was going to ask. Mine was a slightly different question. Yours was a slightly different time period, but that doesn't matter. The broad numbers are the same. Obviously, these are based on tickets issued, are they not, after a set time?
Yeah, these are the
Could you just put your microphone on?
yes, to confirm, these are the transaction records. So this is an analysis of every payment made after 6 p.m. by the different means you can make payments.
Yeah. The actual revenue loss is therefore likely to be higher.
So with parking being 3 hours, we can't easily separate out if people are paid bill earlier than 6 o'clock, wouldn't have paid for periods of time after. So this is just the transactions that are recorded after 6 p.m.
Yeah. So the net effect is, if we move this back, the actual income loss will be higher, because those arriving earlier will still be able to. Well, if you have a Hillingdon first, at the moment, if you arrive at 4 o'clock, or if you arrive at 5 o'clock and intend to stay till 8 or 9, you would have. Or if you arrive at 4 o'clock and intend beyond 3 hours, you would have to pay either the higher rate for a non-card holder or the fee for a card holder. Whereas, depending on what I move it to, there will be there for people who no longer have to pay. That's just it. We can't quantify that because we just don't know the exact impact of that, but it is an impact which is higher than the figures quoted.
It's at 9 usually, so you're only up until 9 o'clock.
Yeah, but
so
it's what time you get there and when you buy your ticket.
Yeah, obviously.
So if now you arrive at 6, you don't have to buy a ticket. If you're a resident, you're covered till 9. And a non-resident arriving at 6 is fine. But if the further back I move it, of course, people arriving in the middle of the afternoon can either buy a cheaper ticket or no ticket at all if they've got a card.
So if they arrive at 6, they get 6, 7, 8, 9. They get
yeah,
the
but
3
if they
hours.
arrive, what I'm saying is, if depending on what if I move this to, if they arrive at 4 o'clock, they may no longer have to pay.
Well, they'd have to pay 4.
No. If you've got a Hillingdon First card, you wouldn't now pay at all. And if you are, you'd also get the cheaper rate.
include the Hillingdon First card? It was just payments, was it?
Yeah, but
Mr.
those
Wayne?
over 3 hours on a Hillingdon First card have to pay.
But 3 hours is 3 hours. They'd have to pay whatever.
I only pay to the end of the
Well, then they wouldn't
chargeable
pay
hours.
if it was...
Just if you're
I think
you're
you
not.
might have to...
I may not have given you the point, but if you think about it logically, it depends when you arrive and what you pay for. And there will be people who could arrive at the moment at 4 o'clock and would have therefore buy a ticket, and under the new anything else they may not have to. So it's just for clarity. It's not a major issue, but it is, that figure is understated. The history of Lido car parking is the history of Lido car parking. I can only deal with what I've got in front of me. I've only got the car parks available to me that I have. I can't invent any new ones. I can't find any new ones. I have expanded the times when breaks can be used. At weekends, it wasn't being used at all, and we have expanded that, and we have put further spaces on in that this year. So that is something, and we.
Reduced from the last time you had that it was open to the public. It's reduced by 50 spaces. There's only 125 available now.
Let me be very careful. Last year, from what I had last year to what I had this year, we opened more spaces this year, with the exception of 2 days. I'm not doing a whole debate on I'm just doing the facts.
Because I haven't got that information.
Well, I moved where the barriers were, apart from on 2 particular Sundays. Easter Sunday, if it falls in the charging period, and Father's Day was the other one, wasn't it?
The barriers have been up all year.
Well, in terms of the recommendations before me, I have done item 1. In terms of item 2, it gives me a sort of menu of options, I think, is the way that I would put it. What I am going to ask officers to do is to do me a 6-month trial period operating from 1st of March 25 with car park hours finishing at 7 o'clock. Car park charging hours finishing at 7 o'clock. And we'll assess how that goes across next summer.
Encouragement. We need an overlap.
That is what I'm going to align the 2 together. That's the decision I'm making. And that isn't. I'm not doing a running debate on that. Sorry, but I will move it back to 7 o'clock, which means post 7 o'clock.
They can park wherever they like.
There is no. We'll take the charges off for a 6-month trial period. We have to assess how that goes and see where that goes. In terms of that deals with the recommendations in the report, and I will close it at that. Thank you very much. Thank you. The next one is the petition regarding the dog-friendly dog hedgerow at Uxbridge Common. Anybody here for that one? You know the format of this, I think you may have gathered. Yeah, you've got 5 minutes, basically. Well, there's less people, so it's going to be easier. You've got 5 minutes to make your case. I've got a report in front of me with some potential recommendations on it. Subject to what you tell me, then have a choice as to either whether I go with what's in here, go with something else, or come up with something incredibly different. Away you go. Could you switch your microphone on, though, for me, please?
Okay. So, Park Road is a very busy, noisy and polluting road, which is very dangerous for animals and young children, and a lot of people avoid that side of Uxbridge Common. Many dogs have been killed on Park Road via the Common when slipping lead or chasing balls and becoming excited when they see a fox or getting a scent or seeing other animals across Park Road. We currently have a hedge along North Common Road that acts like a very good barrier to animals escaping, chasing foxes towards dens in the surrounding estates.
an approach to the Chrysalis Fund to consider some form of barrier was refused. So as the Neura representative, I wrote to Dragana, I will have Dragana Knevich, I think it is pronounced it, Knezevich, thank you very much, of the Green Spaces team in February 23 to ask for the council's support for a residence project in a similar way that a few years ago we planted whips in the Hillingdon House Farm using local residents and the Scouts. I envisage getting residents to fund the purchase of the whips, suggested Hawthorn at about £1 each, and using the Neuro newsletter to raise planting volunteers and approaching the Scouts, etc., to do the planting in early winter. We appreciate that in the early years this hedging will not be a physical obstruction, but increasingly it will be a visual amenity screen, and the view of cars on Park Road as an amenity screening to the view of cars on Park Road, much in the way that the Central Reservation achieves for the opposite line of traffic.
And our proposal is a fast-growing hedge whips planted either through volunteer planting or mechanical planting on the common along Park Road. This will provide a deterrent to escaping animals, children and noise, pollution block, as well as removing the eyesore of the heavy traffic along Park Road. We just would like the council to meet us halfway with this plan, or...
Okay.
Yeah.
Stuart, have you got any comments you want to add in addition to what's in the report?
No, I don't think so. Only I think you're talking about the gorse on the North Common, which is obviously a naturally occurring shrub, not a planted hedge. That's just part of that open common, gorse and heather and that kind of thing.
So we haven't actually planted anything on North Common? Right,
no.
Okay, that was one of my queries. As to the fact that this is common land and village greens are protected by the Common Act of 2006, and therefore, do I take it we couldn't just do this?
We could plant the hedge, but we believe it would require fencing for establishment to stop animals going through it and rabbits eating them and everything like that. So that would be the hedge. So we would need permission to fence the hedge in so that it establishes going forward, which is pretty much standard practice for hedgerows on public open space.
And would the hedge then become part of would the hedge remain, the fence become part of the hedge?
No, then you could at a later date take the fence away.
Gotcha.
I love the vision of rabbits.
Huh?
Not seeing them.
Rabbits, deers, dogs, it's animals.
Anything that might decide to do this.
And also mechanical damage from people maintaining the space as well. So it's standard practice to young hedges to be fenced.
Okay. Right. The other issue is, of course, there is the option, I think the report does bring this out, if you go across the other side of the road, of course, there is a fairly large enclosed space on Hillingdon House Farm. Yep. Which actually, in some ways, is probably more suitable for dogs and bulls and all sorts of other things. Okay, that clarifies that one. What I will do, in terms of the recommendations I've got, I mean, I hear what you're saying, I understand where we're coming from with this. I will take the opportunity with officers just to have a look for myself, because although I drive up and down this fairly regularly, I actually haven't walked up and down it for a long time. So it's not a bad opportunity for me to have a individual look before I make a formal decision. I think that's probably the fairest way forward. It's not one of those. Some of these things that come to me, I know very well, and therefore can quite easily adjudicate them. But this one, I haven't walked along there for quite some time. So what I will do with officers is just take a walk along the road and just see what the issues are, and then we'll come to a formal decision. So I'm going to hold it for tonight, but we will come back to you.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's quite a lot of there's trees, but there's just nothing else. And when they do the cuttings, they just cut everything.
Yeah,
So,
I just need. Yeah,
You need
the
to
problem
have
is if I drive up Park Road, I'm heading up Park Road towards the A40,
yeah.
and by that point I'm already moving
Yeah, but
significantly and watching the traffic, if I'm honest. And therefore, it'd be a better opportunity for me just to actually park up and go and have a
Go for a walk around it.
Yeah, and then actually see what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
So what will happen then? Will you write to us?
Yeah,
or
the
how?
Democratic Services will write and advise once I've made a formal decision.
Okay. Brilliant.
Yeah, I just have to find the time to do it. But yeah,
Okay.
they will write and advise you
Yeah.
what the outcome is.
Okay. Great.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you all very much, and that concludes tonight's hearing.